Hey guys, Brush Pillow here. Welcome back to another episode of Scrap Mechanic. Unfortunately, I'm having more audio problems, so this video is actually going to be recorded after the fact. The audio is going to be recorded after the fact. Video is the original video, so I'll be doing my best to talk through kind of what we did, right? So jumping into challenge number 12, we managed to compete challenges 1 through 11 before in the previous episode. So yeah, let's jump right in. This one is a little bit interesting, right? The one before this, we had like a jump, basically a ramp going up and over, and we had to jump a large gap with some thrusters and make it to the other side. This time we have some vertical platforms to make it over. So yeah. Thinking through how to do this was a little bit challenging, right? I'm looking at the course right now and seeing, okay, 2 jumps, going to look in the chest, and the first thing I notice is that we only have 2 thrusters. So given 2 thrusters, right, it's going to be kind of hard to make like a well-balanced vehicle. And also I realized, so these buttons that they've been giving us this whole time. It looks like I was reading through the manual, and you can actually program those buttons to a like hot bar inside of the seat of a vehicle. So started utilizing that. Definitely a handy thing to be able to do. We can kind of drive the car and then turn the thrusters on and off as we go along. So with that, I ran into some technical difficulties actually. So let's cut right past these and we'll jump into the next section. Right, so back in the game, going to pick up some of our items. I realized that we don't need a lot of this junk that we've had in our inventory the whole time, right? We've got the welding tool, the paint tool, the connector tool, lift tool, handbook. Getting rid of the welding tool, paint tool. All we really need to keep is, the lift and the connection tool, or whatever they call it. And that gives us enough room in our hotbar for just about everything else. So so that worked out really well. Now, as you may know, if you've watched the other 2, it's pretty standard, right? The templates that we make for these vehicles. So far, it's been very much just a simple base with 4 wheels and connect it all together. I mean, make it turn. That's been just about enough. But now that we're adding in the 3rd dimension here, having to hop up these platforms, it's going to get a little bit more interesting. So I'm just trying to kind of think through what we should do right now, and got some ideas, diving straight into it, building out this platform that, again, we always start with. And I think my goal for this one was to... Right, so kind of what I was describing here was like, okay, if we have a thruster on the left and a thruster on the right, like that, but maybe pointing upwards so that we're like going into the sky, right there, it wouldn't really work because we're going to have like an axis running straight down the center of that. And it's going to kind of be teetering as it's trying to fly. Now, if we put boosters on the front and back, we may have more of like a barrel roll type action, and that's much more manageable, I think. So building out on the back here, a little place for us to stick that thruster, and we'll do the same thing on the front side. And then the goal will be to have this thing just about as balanced as possible. So we'll keep it fairly symmetrical. It's going to get a little bit interesting as we go to add in the engine and the seats, because of course those 2 items aren't going to be perfectly symmetrical. Of course, we only have 1 seat, 1 engine, one's going to go in the front, one's going to go in the back, and that's going to throw a wrench in things just a little bit. But thankfully we can adjust the power of these thrusters, and that will help us quite a bit going forward. Going to be a lot of minor tweaks to figure out how to balance this thing. So scavenged a few parts off this thing. I was starting to run out, And now I'm starting to kind of think through the rest of this thing. So still need to put on some wheels. We do need to roll it. Thinking we're going to get this thing up to a reasonable speed. That's going to get our forward velocity going, and then we'll be able to activate those thrusters with the push of a button, and that should propel us up to the next platform. So right now, throwing on all the bearings we need, just a single set of bearings on the back, and then on the front we should have 2 sets of bearings. I think I may have missed one there, but I'm sure I'll go back and fix it eventually. So yeah, we want to be able to turn in the front and lower this thing down. I think all we have left is to throw this seat in, throw in the engine, and throw in a button and get that all hooked up. Now, if you're paying close attention, you may notice that I am making a terrible, terrible mistake right now. Turns out I built this thing so symmetrically that I even fooled myself. Yeah, the seat is totally facing backwards right now, looking for a place to put the button. I placed the button. I'm not happy with it. No, this isn't good at all. Let's put it on the front. No, joke's on you. That is not the front. So it took me quite a minute to figure this out. I actually managed to connect the seat to the engine and then engine to the wheels. And I was like, oh yeah, rear wheel drive. Let's do that. No problem. I even started connecting up the button. So you can connect the... well, first I realized that my turning bearings were on the back. I'm like, well, that's not right. How did I manage that? I must have gotten flipped around. And then it hit me. I took a second, looked around, and was like, what? Wait a minute. No, that was the front. And I even like accepted it. I'm like, we'll just keep the turning wheels in the back. But nope. It's really setting in now. It was a big mistake. So anyway, swap the seat around to the back and put the engine in the front. And yeah, that'll turn out a little bit better. So still hadn't tested the whole button thing up to this point, but again, judging by the manual, it seemed to make sense. So yeah, we'll see how that turns out. And connecting up these wheels in the proper direction this time. Yep, we can turn with our wheels on the front, which I thought was the back. And what? Is that it? Is that everything? No, I need to connect the button to the thruster. So seat controls button, right? Because the seat has like a hot bar, and you can see a number 1 on that pink circle. And then the button, of course, will control the thrusters. So I'm leaving it like the default thrust for now because no idea how much power we're going to get out of these things. Maybe it'll lift us off the ground. Let's see. Well, turns out I didn't even test it because... Why? Why didn't I test it? Oh. Okay. Yeah, something wasn't connected properly, but now I can turn, so that's good. I think I had the engine connected to the front wheels instead of the seat to the front wheels, so that didn't work out. Testing out the thrusters, clearly that didn't work, so turn those babies up a notch, maybe 2. I think I'm just doing 1 notch for each thruster at this point, and let's see what happens. Oh yeah, that works. So that gets us off the ground for sure. Now, if you were paying attention, you would have seen that the front end came up a lot faster than the rear end. So move that engine forward just a little bit. You're going to have to reconnect those connections from engine to back right, engine to back left, and try once again. So it helped a little bit, but it isn't good enough. So thankfully, they gave us a bunch of these metal bricks in the chest there. So going to try sticking a few of those on the front and see if that helps out at all. So making a nice, long, heavy weight just stuck on the front of this thing, and we'll give it another shot. Right, so it's working. It is actually a little too heavy now on the front, so let's rip a few of these off and see what we get. If anything, maybe we have to adjust the thrusters, but no, that actually looks pretty stinking good. So now the only hope is that once we start driving this thing, we don't get any barrel roll action, because that's really the only piece that is out of our control, right? So, what am I doing now? Okay, making sure the wheels are rotating properly, because, yeah, they were trying to spin against each other. Probably need to turn up the engine. I don't know if I did that yet, but it doesn't have much power. There we go. Let's knock that up a few. And all right. At this point, I should be good to go. So I think we have attempt number 1 at the slopes here. So I put it at a nice slow speed. I want to make sure I get lined up and I'm able to time this properly. But looks like our front end is still raising just a little bit faster than the hind end there. And I think with the rotation of the wheels from the engine, it's creating some kind of weird physics effect where, like, that spin is somehow rotating the vehicle, like a gyroscopic effect. And that changed the result of my, like, when I was standing still thrusting versus driving thrusting, whole different experience. So basically at this point I'm like, okay, the faster we can get in the air, and the faster we can be going forward, the sooner we can get this over with, and the less time we have to fail, and for our orientation to kind of go all out of whack. So that worked. Turned it up a few notches. This time I didn't really get the run up I needed to get up to the second platform, but I go back a little bit and see if I can give it another shot. Let's see. So lining it up and going, and yeah, I hit it just a little bit early once again, and yeah, that's not a recoverable position, so I had to reset. Here we go again. Line it up, perfect, and make sure we give ourselves a good enough run up, because last time we definitely did not. And there we go. That's much better. So yeah, that is what, challenge number 12, 13, something like that. Anyway, on to the next one. This one was a little dumbfounding to me at first. I took a glance, and yeah, just looking at this thing, it's pretty tough to tell what's going on. There's like a red light at the end. I couldn't really tell what that was. Took a nice close look at these things and realized that, oh, maybe they're like a sensor of some kind, or, oh, actually it's a mirror, right? So you're seeing the reflection of that red and yellow McDonald's wall against the whatever room this is. Is this like a warehouse? I don't know. Anyway, yeah, so getting a good look at the path. It's a long straightaway, and it's almost looking like that's a gate at the end, and there's arrows on the ground. And basically my assumption was that we're going to be racing against the clock or racing against something to get to that door before it closes. So I assume, 4 rocket thrusters in that chest is going to be needed to get us up to speed. That's a lot of power. So was kind of thinking through, like, okay, what are we going to do here? I mean, this thing is going to want to topple. If we're putting 4 thrusters on this thing, it's not going to handle it very well. So anyway, plenty of blocks, 64 blocks, 16 metal. The metal's going to come in handy if we do start toppling. 8 bearings this time. Definitely surprised me. Up to this point, I think the most we had gotten was like 6. And, we've got an engine, 4 thrusters, a button, and then plenty of wheels. So if we want to put more wheels on this thing, we could do that with the increased number of bearings. And then, of course, another button, which I guess, yeah, the intent for the button is that you just, attach it to the thrusters. But really, like, for some of these challenges, it's almost seeming like there's no point in even having an engine on it. You can just use the thrusters in their entirety, and that's all the power you'll ever need. If anything, the engine just kind of interferes. So anyway, I decided not to go for the big old wooden base that I've been doing. There's really no point in that. I can just put some wood directly to the bottom of the seat and make it like an axle, just like that first vehicle I did in the very first episode. And in this case, I wanted to go with a nice wide footprint. So big wheels on the back, kind of low down. And in the front, we'll have some smaller wheels. So anyway, so the other thing would be the rocket boosters. And turns out they go pretty perfectly right here. So setting them right against the back of the vehicle here. We can fit 3. I decided to leave it at 3 just to see how it goes, and if we needed to add a 4th, we could always do that. But yeah, so that's the back. Now on to the front. And since we are going to have so much power going into this thing, I don't want it to be too short, right? Because it's going to want to like do a wheelie on us and flip backwards. So make it a nice long front end, extend it out pretty far. And I think the goal with this one as well initially was to like have it level. So I'd have the big wheels up a little bit higher. That way when I put the small wheels on front, it can be level. But then I realized that, okay, maybe having a downward angle on this thing actually isn't a bad idea. So I actually ended up keeping the smaller wheels higher up, and you'll see once I drop it down, this thing is really pointing downwards. That's going to help us with the whole tilting problem. So anyway, extended it out just a little bit further, threw on a couple more blocks, and thinking through how I'm going to do the whole bearing thing. So making it so that we can control this thing. Steering is always important. Putting these bearings on the side, and yeah, small wheels on front. So you can see the form factor there. It's going to drop that front end as soon as we take it off the lift. So that will be good indeed. And now we have an engine. If we have any problems tilting, we can always move that thing forward a little bit. We want to connect the seat to the engine, and of course engine to all the wheels. And let's see what else. So I want to be able to turn this thing, give it some power. And I mean, this is the normal stuff that we've been doing this whole time. Nothing unique going on here. So need to set up a button for this thing once again. And yeah, we'll see how it goes. I'll check back in once it's built. Right, so it's all built. Gas it up a little bit, and we're ready to go off to the races. So still not exactly sure at this point what's going to happen once I cross this line, but I just saw, yeah, on the ground we've got like a signal flowing through, and yeah, it raced us to the door. Wow, that was rough. I just did some crazy barrel rolls right there. So I decided now that I know what's going on, I'm going to give it full throttle all the way through, and I managed to keep up with it. I beat the door, but I just narrowly missed the finish line. So this went way better than ever expected. I didn't have to bump the thrusters whatsoever. Easy peasy, beat it. Except on my, third attempt? For some reason, it was like my engine settings got reset. This thing was so slow, wouldn't go anywhere. Said to go back in, raise up the the engine, and back again. And then ran into even more problems. Again, with like the whole spinning of the wheels, there's some weird physics action that goes on the faster those things are spinning. So I knocked that engine down a notch, and we were good to go. Didn't think you could get such a significant difference out of one notch on an engine, but what do I know? So that did it. We managed to do it in 5 seconds, 5.6 seconds. Easy peasy. So for this one, I even turned on the music, but unfortunately we won't have that joyous joy of sound flowing through our ears. But if we look at the camera, we've got something interesting ahead of us. So a big ramp, except it's not just a ramp. It goes up a slope and then down and then up. So This time, I'm actually going to fast forward through and we'll see what I came up with. All right, so here we are in a vehicle almost identical to the last challenge. And, tried and true. Why not? See how it goes. I decided I want to kick on these boosters right as we come down the slope, but we are having a bit of a weight issue. That front end is certainly wanting to just fly up into the air, and we immediately start flipping all over the place. So at this point, I made a few tweaks, throwing on some weight on the front of the vehicle. Metal works best. When in doubt, add more metal. That's what I always say. It's what my dad taught me. It's what my mom always said. Metal works best. So we're going to try this once again. And with a little bit of metal, no. We're flipping a little bit more slowly. So it's helping somewhat, but it definitely isn't solving our problem. So I decided to add even more. And spoiler alert, this didn't work either. So, without showing you every little thing right here, let's just say I made a few more tweaks and, yeah, it didn't really work out. What I ended up finding though is back to that whole spinning wheel gyroscopic effect, right? I found that if I'm holding W, right, to go forward, if I continue holding W while I'm in the air, it really negatively affects my whole like flipping right here. Like if I keep holding W, I just start flipping backwards like crazy. If I let off W in the air, I flip a little bit more slowly. And if I do the complete opposite and start reversing while I'm in the air, I noticed that the flipping is not nearly as bad. So I started experimenting with that just a little bit, and lo and behold, I was able to make good things happen. So with the final iteration of this vehicle, we've extended it out even more, added even more metal, and now you can see the flipping is not nearly as bad. And this was kind of after I already discovered that whole, spinning and reverse thing. So I started mastering that technique and increasing the thrust levels just a little bit. And I'm going to jump to the part now where we successfully beat this. And finally, we have our final attempt. All right. Flying off the ramp. Making nice control on the way. And, oh yeah, a beautiful smooth landing. That's exactly what I was going for. And that is the finish. So, with this one, I decided to call it quits. But right before doing that, why don't we check out and see what we have for the next challenge. Oh yeah. Yep, this was a little bit intimidating. We got a completely vertical wall going up the side of this thing, and, got a lot of thoughts flowing, but decided to put that one off until the next one. So thank you everyone for watching. Sorry about the voiceover, but we made it work. Thanks.